Mr.ShroomCaster. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and most families have been there for generations. The town thrived on family businesses, bakeries, hardware stores, auto shops. My dad, Rick, stood at the center of it all with his company, Rick's Plumbing Supplies. He'd started the business back in the 80s with nothing but an old, rusty truck and sheer determination. People in town loved to joke that if you turned on a faucet or flushed a toilet, you were probably using something from Rick's inventory. It was more than a company. It was a symbol of his hard work and success. By the time I turned 18, the business was booming. Rick's Plumbing Supplies had grown into the largest supplier in the region, with warehouses packed full of pipes, fittings, and fixtures. Contractors and store owners relied on my dad for their inventory, and he delivered every time. My dad was a local legend, a man who had built an empire from scratch. My dad didn't just run the business, he lived it. His days started early, often before sunrise, and ended late. If he wasn't meeting clients, he was fixing something in the shop or crunching numbers at the office. He always said, "Doesn't matter what you do, as long as you do it well." Plumbing might not be glamorous, but it's honest work that pays the bills. For him, the business wasn't just a job, it was his legacy, and he made sure I knew that he wanted me to carry it forward. Whenever the topic of my future came up, Dad would steer the conversation back to the company. He'd say things like, "You're going to take this place to the next level someday," or "Everything I'm building here, it's for you." I could feel the weight of his expectations, but I had my own dreams. My first taste of filmmaking came when I was 13. I'd found an old Panasonic video camera collecting dust in our attic. That summer, during a family barbecue, I decided to record everything. The sizzling burgers, my cousins playing tag, my mom laughing at one of Dad's jokes. I didn't think much of it until I played back the footage later that night. Watching the clips, I saw things I hadn't even noticed while filming. A glint of sunlight on the grill, the way my mom's laughter lit up her face. It was like seeing the world through a new lens, and I was hooked. From that day on, the camera became my constant companion. By the time I got to high school, I was known as that guy with the camera. If there was a wedding, a school play, or even a cringeworthy talent show, people knew I'd be there to film it. By senior year, I met two guys who shared my obsession with video, Luke and Jason. Luke was the creative visionary, always coming up with wild ideas for stories, while Jason was the tech genius who could make anything work, no matter how cheap our equipment was. We spent every weekend in Luke's backyard, filming goofy short films that we'd edit late into the night. Our stories were silly, cheesy horror flicks, over-the-top action scenes, but we loved every minute of it. One night, after wrapping up a particularly ridiculous project, Jason said, "Can you imagine what we could do if we had real equipment?" We didn't have much, just a clunky old camera, a few lights, and a lot of duct tape, but we made it work. When college rolled around, we started getting small gigs, weddings, promotional videos for local businesses, even an ad for a coffee shop. We weren't making much, but every shoot felt like a step closer to something real. Then one night, Luke pitched the idea that changed everything. "Why don't we make this official?" he said. "Let's start a business, a real video production company." The room went quiet for a moment. My heart was racing. This was it, the chance to turn our passion into something tangible. When I told my dad about the idea, his reaction was exactly what I'd feared. He sat me down, arms crossed, and said, "Brian, are you serious? Making videos? That's not a real career." I tried to explain the potential, the excitement, but he wasn't hearing it. To him, video production was a gamble, a flashy, unstable career that didn't hold a candle to the solid, reliable business he'd built. "You've got a sure thing here," he said, gesturing to the office. "A steady paycheck, a future, my approval. You think I worked this hard so you could take some crazy risk?" Even my mom chimed in, trying to nudge me back toward the family business. In the end, I caved. I told Luke and Jason I couldn't join them. Jason just shrugged and said, "We'll still do it. You know where to find us." My parents were thrilled. Dad smiled for the first time in weeks. Mom told me she was proud. But as I walked away from Luke and Jason, I felt a heavy, sinking feeling in my chest. I had done the right thing, the responsible thing, but deep down, I knew I just walked away from something I truly loved. After graduating college with a degree in business, a decision heavily influenced by my dad, I stepped straight into the family business. There was no downtime, no adjustment period. The moment I came home with my diploma, Dad was ready with a plan. "No time to waste," he said. "You're gonna learn everything there is to know about this place." True to his word, he didn't ease me in. My first week, I was working 10-hour days, managing inventory and shadowing him during meetings with suppliers. It was overwhelming, but I told myself it was temporary. Just a few years to help Dad out. Then, I could figure out my next move. The company was bigger than ever. Rick's Plumbing Supplies had expanded to include multiple warehouses, fleets of trucks, and a client list that ranged from local contractors to regional chain stores. As Dad started to delegate more responsibilities to me, I found myself running the show more often than not. Inventory management, supplier negotiations, handling customer accounts, it all fell on me. Some days, I'd look up from my desk at the piles of invoices and spreadsheets, wondering how Dad had done this for decades without burning out. Still, Dad was proud. "You're a natural at this," he told me one afternoon after I closed a big deal with a contractor. "I always knew you'd be the one to take this place to the next level." On paper, I was thriving. Profit margins were up, customers were happy, and the business was booming. But inside, I felt like I was slowly losing myself. Nights were the worst. After long days at the office, I'd collapse onto the couch and scroll through Instagram, hoping for some distraction. Instead, I found reminders of everything I'd left behind. Luke and Jason's company, Visionary Realworks, was thriving. What had started as a scrappy little operation shooting wedding videos had grown into a full-fledged production studio. Their Instagram was a highlight reel of success. Sleek commercials for national brands, award-winning short films, and behind-the-scenes shots of music video shoots. I followed both of them, but rarely interacted. Every post felt like a reminder of the dream I'd walked away from. Jason's photo at a red carpet event for an indie film festival? Punched to the gut. Luke's video showing a drone shot of their latest commercial shoot? Another punch. Meanwhile, my days were filled with calls about bulk discounts on PVC pipes. On the surface, my life looked perfect. By 26, I was earning more than most people did in their 40s. I'd moved into a 2-story house just outside of town with a spacious yard and a garage where I parked my brand new car. My finances were solid. No student loans, no debt, no worries about bills. People envied my position. Friends from college would comment on how set I was in life. Even Dad couldn't stop talking about how proud he was of the empire we were building together. But every time someone congratulated me, all I could think was, this isn't what I want. One night, while cleaning out the garage, I stumbled across an old box shoved into a corner. Inside was a dusty hard drive filled with files from my high school and college days. I plugged it into my laptop and was immediately hit with a wave of nostalgia. There they were, our short films, behind-the-scenes bloopers, even the original pitch deck Jason had created when we talked about starting the company. Then I found a folder labeled The Big Dream. Inside was a 3-minute teaser video we'd made, outlining our vision for the production company we wanted to build. It was cheesy, full of bad lighting and amateur editing, but it captured our passion. Watching my younger self talk about wanting to tell stories that mattered, I felt a lump in my throat. I couldn't hold it back. I cried right there in the garage, mourning the part of me that I'd left behind. Luke and Jason had done it. They'd built the dream we'd talked about during those sleepless nights in college. And me? I was stuck in a world of spreadsheets, pipe fittings, and supplier calls. For the first time, I allowed myself to wonder, what if I'd chosen differently? What if I'd taken the risk instead of playing it safe? I wasn't sure if it was regret or longing, but I knew one thing. This wasn't the life I wanted. It had been 5 years since I last spoke to Luke or Jason. We hadn't had a fight, no dramatic falling out, just a slow drift apart. I'd like to say it was life that got in the way, college, jobs, different paths, but the truth was, I avoided them. Every social media post from Visionary Realworks felt like a gut punch. Their success wasn't just a reminder of what I'd walked away from. It was proof that the dream we'd built together could have worked. And seeing it flourish without me? That was harder to face than I wanted to admit. I stayed in my lane, focused on the family business, and ignored their updates. Mutual friends would occasionally mention them. Did you hear about Luke and Jason? Their latest ad is all over TV. But I always changed the subject. It wasn't bitterness, not exactly. It was shame. That's why seeing their booth at the Chicago Trade Expo hit me like a sucker punch. I was there with my dad, scouting suppliers for the business. The expo was huge, stretching across a massive convention center, with rows upon rows of booths showcasing the latest in plumbing supplies. Eco-friendly faucets, advanced pipe sealants, water heaters promising unprecedented energy efficiency. My dad was in his element, shaking hands, making connections, swapping stories with other industry veterans. Me? I was just there to carry the bags and nod at the right times. I'd slipped away to grab a coffee, craving a few moments of quiet, when I saw it. A sleek booth with a glowing banner that read Visionary Realworks. Creative Video Solutions. At first, I froze, thinking it couldn't possibly be them. But then I saw Luke and Jason. Their setup stood out like a beacon amid the drab, practical displays around it. A large flat-screen TV played a loop of their work. Cinematic commercials for major brands, emotionally moving short films, and vibrant music videos. Their logo, sharp and modern, gleamed across the backdrop. A small crowd had gathered, listening intently as Jason talked about their creative process. I stood there, staring, caught between the urge to walk over and the overwhelming desire to turn and leave before they noticed me. Before I could make up my mind, Jason spotted me. His face lit up, and he called out over the crowd, "Brian? Holy shit, is that you?" I felt my stomach drop. There was no escaping now. I plastered on a smile and walked toward the booth, coffee cup trembling slightly in my hand. Jason stepped out to greet me, pulling me into a quick, friendly bro hug. "Man, it's been forever. What's it been, 5, 6 years?" "Yeah," I replied, forcing a laugh. "Something like that." Luke turned from the group he was talking to and broke into a wide grin. "Brian, no way. This is wild." He crossed the booth and hugged me too. It felt strange, like reconnecting with someone you used to know but didn't anymore. I could feel the questions bubbling under the surface of their smiles. Where had I been? Why had I disappeared? We made small talk at first. They asked me what brought me to the expo, and I gestured toward my dad across the room. "I'm here for the family business," I said. "Rick's Plumbing Supplies. You know, the usual." Luke raised an eyebrow. "So, you're running the company now?" "Not quite," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "But I'm handling most of the day-to-day stuff. Inventory, suppliers, customer accounts. It keeps me busy." Jason nodded politely, but I could feel the subtle tension in the air. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. "So, do you still film? Pick up a camera now and then?" I hesitated, staring down at my coffee cup. "Not as much as I'd like. Work takes up most of my time." There was a brief silence, heavy with unspoken words. They didn't press me, but their expression said enough. They knew I wasn't happy, even if I couldn't bring myself to admit it. Jason motioned toward the TV screen looping their projects. "You've seen some of our stuff, right? The short doc we did last year? Or the travel campaign ads?" I nodded vaguely, though I'd never watched any of their work beyond a few Instagram highlights. "Yeah, looks like you guys are killing it." Jason smirked. "Not bad for a couple of broke college kids, huh?" Luke chimed in, his voice brimming with pride. "We've got some big projects lined up too. It's been a wild ride, but man, it's worth it." Their success was palpable, not just in their words, but in the way they carried themselves. Confident, fulfilled, living the dream we'd once shared. And me? I felt like a ghost standing in the shadow of what could have been. Before I left, Jason handed me a sleek business card with the Visionary RealWorks logo embossed in silver. "We should grab a drink while you're in town," he said. "Catch up properly. It'd be great to hear what you've been up to." I slipped the card into my pocket, forcing a smile. "Yeah, definitely." As I walked away, I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my head. Their booth, their projects, their confidence. It all felt like a mirror held up to the life I'd chosen not to live. The rest of the expo passed in a blur. My dad was thrilled with the suppliers we'd met, talking nonstop about new opportunities for the company. I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere, consumed by thoughts of Luke and Jason. That night, back at my hotel, I sat on the bed staring at Jason's business card. The words Visionary RealWorks seemed to mock me, a tangible reminder of everything I'd given up. For years, I told myself I made the right choice, the practical choice. But now, for the first time, I wasn't sure. What if I'd chosen differently? The thought scared me as much as it excited me. I wasn't just questioning my decision. I was questioning everything. The night after the expo, I sat in my dark living room with Jason's business card in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other. The TV flickered in the background, muted, while my thoughts ran in circles. I couldn't stop replaying the day in my head. The way Luke and Jason had looked at me, not with pity exactly, but with that quiet understanding that I wasn't where I wanted to be. I envied them, their confidence, their success. But more than that, I envied the fact that they tried. They'd put everything on the line, taken a chance on their dream, and it had paid off. Sure, there were no guarantees it would have worked if I joined them. Maybe we'd have failed. Maybe we'd be broke. But at least I would have known. At least I wouldn't be here, years later, wondering what if. That weekend, I decided to meet up with Jason and Luke for drinks. They were in high spirits, celebrating a successful expo. Jason told me about a new partnership they landed with a tech company, while Luke shared plans for a short film they were producing. So, Jason asked, leaning forward, "What about you, Brian? Ever think about picking up a camera again? You've still got the eye, man." I hesitated, swirling the drink in my hand. Honestly? Yeah, all the time. I miss it. Luke's face softened. Then why don't you? I didn't have a good answer. I tried to laugh it off, but their question stayed with me long after I left the bar. Driving home, I imagined what it would be like to join them now, to drop everything, leave the plumbing world behind, and dive headfirst into filmmaking. The thought thrilled me, but it also terrified me. I spent the next few months in a strange haze. Every morning, I'd wake up with the same gnawing feeling in my chest. I'd go to work, sit at my desk, and do what I needed to do. But the fire I once had, the drive to make something meaningful, was gone. I tried to shake it off, telling myself that I had responsibilities, that walking away from a stable business was reckless. But every now and then, I'd catch myself daydreaming. I'd imagine what my life could have looked like if I'd said yes to Luke and Jason all those years ago. I'd see myself behind the camera, filming something I was proud of. And then I'd snap back to reality, where I was brokering deals for bulk shipments of faucets. Then, life threw me a curveball. I met Amanda at a friend's wedding. She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. Smart, grounded, with this infectious laugh that made everyone around her smile. We hit it off instantly. She asked me about my work, and I gave her the usual rundown of the family business. But then she asked a question that caught me off guard. "What do you really want to do?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. No one had asked me that in years. Over the next few months, Amanda and I grew closer. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our families, our dreams. I told her about my love for filmmaking, about the projects I used to work on, and about Luke and Jason's company. She listened quietly, then said, "It's never too late, you know?" I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I wasn't sure it was true. A year later, Amanda and I were married. Standing at the altar, looking into her eyes, I felt a new kind of certainty. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just thinking about myself. I was thinking about us, about the life we were building together, about the family we wanted to start. I knew what that meant. I couldn't take the risks I'd once dreamed of. I couldn't drop everything to chase a passion that might not lead anywhere. Amanda deserved stability, and I wanted to give her that. One evening, not long after the wedding, I went into the garage and pulled out the hard drive with all my old projects. 4 hours, I watched footage from my past, grainy short films, awkward behind-the-scenes clips, and the pitch deck we'd made for the company that never was. I smiled, I laughed, and then I cried. Finally, I copied the files onto a USB drive, placed it in a box, and tucked it away in the back of a closet. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the right thing to do. Some days, I still think about what could have been. I wonder if I'd be happier if I'd taken the leap and joined Luke and Jason all those years ago. Maybe I'd be thriving in the film industry, or maybe I'd be broke and struggling. I'll never know. But here's what I do know. Amanda is my anchor. She's my family now. And one day, when we have kids, I'll tell them about the dreams I didn't chase. Not to make them feel sorry for me, but to remind them of the importance of trying, of taking risks when you can. I regret not trying. I probably always will. But life isn't just about what you want. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice for the people you love. So I'll keep going. For Amanda, for our future, and for the life we're building together.